And when we went to the airport to meet, Tanya kept saying, "Do you know what she looks like?" And I said, "No, I never seen her a day in my life. But we'll know her when we see her." And she kept saying, when a lady would get off the phone, "Is that off the plane? Is that her? Is that her? Is that her?" I said, "Hell, I don't know." I said, "But we'll know her when we see her." And she was about the last person to get off the plane. And I told Tanya, "That's her." And she said, "It's gotta be because nobody else is getting off the plane." What I can say about her these last few months that I've talked with her on the phone, she's a very, very loving and kind and warm person. We listened to her tape and we liked it. I know she's serious about what she's doing. I know she's serious about sponsorship and her area and carrying the message of Narcotics Anonymous. Without any further ado, I bring you Carmalita from Washington, D.C.
I'm an addict, and my name is Carmalita. And shall I say good morning, top of the morning, or whatever your pleasure be this morning? There are a few things that you need to know, and a couple of things I need to do. No matter how often this happens, you get really, really nervous. It's also a time when one must be real honest and remember the purpose of being here in Narcotics Anonymous. It's also a time for me to say to some people here that have really become very special, and some that have always been special for a long time. When Mike called me, it was a time in my life when things were just a bit much for me to deal with. And as I understand now that God works in mysterious ways, and he's always on his job, even on Sunday morning. And when Mike called me and asked me about coming, I not only felt quite privileged, but it was almost like I knew that God was answering some prayers. So I want to say to him, because he's been quite, I don't even know how to say it. Usually when people work on the convention committee, they're absolutely intolerable most of the time. And I know because I worked on the 85 World Convention in Washington, and I became not only intolerable, but I became a complete pain in the butt. And he has been so calm and so gentle and so loving, and even to the point where he's been even humorous, and I think that's absolutely great. So I want to thank Michael for taking real good care of this woman who needed to be taken care of. Thank you, Mike. I want to say to the convention committee, and there really are not words, but you have done a marvelous job. There are those of us, such as Dot T and Bob and many others, we've traveled around to the world conventions, to other conventions, but this has been different, believe me, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. I also want to say to someone who came here, as we know in Narcotics Anonymous, people will direct you, as Bob talked about last night. Follow your directions. I just want to say, Pamela, I love you, and thank you for being here at this convention for me. There are those that came from Washington, and they know how I feel about them, but there are a couple of special people, such as Doug, Wendy, Larry, Bobby Joe, Billy G. They know how I feel at this point in time in my life, that God has delivered so much joyous times and just gracious being in this world here today. I want to say to all of them, I love you. To a young man who met me at another convention and was not just being nice, but I think he really wanted to spend some time with me, and I certainly had a really, really good morning. I say thank you to you, Tony. For two ladies that we had kind of planned what we were going to do when we got here, Sandra and Marcia, just kind of know that my weekend began on the right note, and pray God I will get back to Washington on the same right note after that plane flight. There are many people here I've met. There are those of you that I also know from other conventions. Remember, just leave the building, take the program with you. For those of you who don't know, I am somebody who has followed directions in this program, and there's always someone else here that knows more than I do. And God knows it was perfectly all right with me that Dot was able to share with you and to give you the real message of recovery. I have been in the wings of women like Dot and my sponsor for a long time. And I am truly grateful that God pointed me in the right directions. Not only was there Dot, Doreen, but there was another woman named Tempe, who I had been in the street with, who had been like a shield for me for a long time, but she got real wise before I did, and she went into treatment and got her act together. And when I finally arrived, she was there for me. And the only thing this woman ever said to me was, don't come to me with no shit. And you better believe when she said it, she meant it. And I did not. I was also told that when I entered that treatment facility that I had no right to speak to this woman for 6 months because I needed to do some real work. I appreciate what I had to go through. I did not like it, but I know today it helps me to understand that in good company, I also need to be in a good spirit. And a lot of times coming into this program, what I needed to learn was what I needed to learn before I began to spread in all other directions. I needed to learn how to leave the madness alone, to leave it where it was, and to learn a brand new way of living. And the only way I could do that was through instructions. I am somebody that has no qualms about taking directions or giving them. And I believe that the only way you can give this thing away is the way you got it, because that's the only way you know. Now, a lot of times you might want to do something profound, but I'm going to tell you it ain't going to come out right. So I do as I've been told to do. And it's been the best lesson I could have learned. Now, I came here from a little town where people didn't do nothing, and it I guess, was all right for a while. But you lived very innocently. You went to church, you went to school, and you stayed home a lot. And when I got into booze and other chemicals, it was like a relief, folk, from that boredom, from that doing nothing kind of a thing going on, and my body was saying, like, let's get up and go, and hello, and other people were doing things, and I wanted to do some of that stuff. And like some folks, I was real fortunate. My mother left home, so I could do damn near anything I wanted to do. And I was kind of glad she left, and when she did, I got to one spot I'd wanted to go to for 19 years, and it was a little old joint down in the country called Moonlight Inn. And all people did there was danced and sawdust, drank liquor, and carried on all night long. But before they went home, they'd like to shoot and cut and do things like that. And that's where I wanted to go. And then, as everybody knows, the issue, the situation, the disease, whatever you want to call it, it progresses. Because I finally left the country, and I went to that great city called Washington, D.C., and something began to happen. I met a guy where I worked in a place called Ben's Chili Bowl, and he said, "Hi, baby." I don't need to tell you what happened after that. I don't know how many women in here come from the country, but God knows when you come to the city and hear something like that, it is absolutely fascinating. So I began to follow instructions. And one way that I knew that I could be with him was to do what he was doing. And it's as simple as that. Getting hooked on drugs, getting into drugs is not difficult at all. All you have to do is just be there. And I agreed to do most everything I did. And a lot of it was not pretty. And on a Sunday morning, you really don't want to hear all that madness. There's just a couple of things I want to tell you about. I became a person, not lady, not woman, a person who did everything she had to do with all parts of her to get what she needed. And some days it got real sticky, real sticky. When I came to this program, they told me I had to talk about that stuff. And it's not at all what you want to talk about, but it's the truth. I became very deceiving. I got real loose. I learned how not to respect myself, and you too. It got so bad that for me to end it was the answer. And it wasn't until I got to this program that I realized how powerless I really, really was. Because even after 3 suicide attempts, the husband, the 2 kids, the time in mental institutions that became numerous, nothing ever worked for me. It got so bad that just going to sleep, I feared because I knew I was going to have to wake up. And when I woke up, it was always the same lesson to learn, how to survive for that day. I did not like it. I don't know about other people, but I really did not know any other way. I did not know how to ask for help. I did not know how to go home and say, hey, something is wrong. It was always somebody else telling me, something is wrong with you, Carmalita. My parents did not know either. They would help me to get to the mental institution, but they had no idea about this thing called booze and drugs and chemicals and all that good stuff. My mother didn't smoke, she didn't drink, she didn't do anything except love and suffer. My father was someone who did practically the same thing. He loved and he suffered. So they didn't have the answers for me. There came a day and a time when I believe all of us have what is known as a rude awakening. And I had mine, and I am grateful for it. And what happened was that I had went to one of those mental institutions, and the doctor told me, he said, we're going to put you on Thorazine for the rest of your life, and we'll take care of you, because you don't seem to be able to manage it. But you know, you get motivation when that kind of stuff happens. So I said, well, I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to take care of business, but you know you got to have your last fling. And it's important in this program, if you're going to move from one space to the other, you best know where you come from. Because I think a lot of times we can miss the message if we don't remember where we came from. And where I came from, folks, is what they call the Strip. And it's better known as 14th and T in Washington. And they had a lot of little rat roach infested rooms, a lot of sick folk just like me, and always somebody who wants you to become a part of the misery or the madness. And there was such a guy when I got to that corner that day, and he says, come on. And 5 of us sit in this room, and we used, and we used, and we used, and we used. And everybody else was okay. But as I know God would have it, it just not fucking worked for me that day. And I tried real hard. I had to walk out of there on a bright sunny morning, and the only thought I had in my mind was, I need some help. And I did not halt. I got in a cab. I told this guy, thank you. I went to my mother's house, and I said, I'm going to get some help. She says, baby, don't worry about nothing. Please go get you some help. And I went straight to St. Elizabeth's Hospital, and I told them, I need some help. Just simple words. They let me in this place. After I sit in a corner for 8 hours watching this sign that said, don't blow this chance. Some of us are going to blow it right after this convention, because we will not sit still long enough to know what's going on in the inside. I got through this program, 16 months, and I went back to the streets. There was one thing I knew. I'd never been able to function on the street. It's good when I got to the institution, but I was able to do it this time because that program had allowed me to open up some doors that I hadn't opened before. And that was just a mustard seed of hope. And they kept telling me, Carmalita, you can do it. You can do it. So every night I went back to this program until I was introduced to the other fellowship. And I know some of you, your little hearts bleed, but I'm going to tell you what the program is about. It says honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Now, how I got here is my story, and I will share it until the day I die. And that's kind of like what I really want to talk about today. You know, addicts, you need to stay open-minded. You might close out the very thing you need to help you. I think if you really read the literature, really read it, you might have a different perspective. I happen to be a part of that literature business down in Florida, Miami, when they were trying to put all of this together. And what I saw was not so much the book that came out, but the people and the pain that they went through just trying to get it together. But I got what I needed at that time in that other program, and what I wanted was to stay clean, folks. And I met a woman who later on became my sponsor through directions They told me to go to this meeting. And this woman and I and a couple of other men got together and got that white book from California and started the NA meetings in Washington. Now, what I need to share with you is this. We tried to change the book. You know, if we weren't, hell, we tried to change it. But as we know, God is watching over all of us, and he got the message through to us. We communicated with the people in California until we got it right. That's what we did. We used people out of treatment. There was one particular one where I worked, and we got people involved, and they started meetings all over that town. And we began to do some things we needed to do. We began to become open enough to let one another share their experience, because we didn't have a whole hell of a lot of hope. But we had a lot of experiences. Some of us were suffering, even in what we now know today is recovery. And there was a guy in Washington that shared at our East Coast Convention, and he talked about strange things happen on the way to recovery. And the thing that happened was, we were a lot of people that were stumbling over our feet, our thoughts, and everything else, trying for the first time to do something right. You know how you try not to lie? You know how all of us try not to get in these relationships? You know how all of us try not to show our weakness? You know how a lot of us try not to say what it really is? And we had a mess going there for a while. But there came a time, as God would have it, when a few of us took a little risk. And I was able to share in a meeting exactly what I had become. A slut, a whore, and somebody who did not care. And nobody got up and left the room. They began to share too. And we all began to cry. And then we all began to really get down. We had meetings at that time that was lasting 3 and 4 hours. And then we left the meeting and went outside in front of the church. And then we left the church and went to the parking lot. And then we left the parking lot and went in somebody's house. You know? The one thing that happened for many of us, folks, is that we stuck together. We stuck together. Nobody got left if they wanted to join us. And that happened for a lot of years in Washington. A lot of years. And you know, we need to do that today, because I believe it's only God's wish for us to be together. And it takes a little work. It takes a little risk. Now, there's a lot of things that have transpired with me since I've been in this program. And I'm not talking about just things. I'm talking about real life experiences. One of the first things that I became grateful for in this program was a good night's sleep. I had not slept in years. Even the time that I was in this place, I couldn't sleep because I was always afraid something was going to happen. It's one of those therapeutic communities where they take you to the wall, boy. And when I got here, I needed just to sleep. And then sometimes I believe I didn't sleep because I was scared. I was afraid of what was going on inside of me, that monster just might check out. And I wasn't quite ready to release it. But I started going to enough meetings. And when I say enough meetings, I mean as many as I could get in that day. And I got some of the answers I needed, like, keep coming back. This too shall pass. And my sponsor used to tell me every day of my life that everything is going to be all right. And I listened to that message constantly. For a long time, she was the answer to cancer, folks, for me. And I had no problem with it. I was with her day, noon, and nighttime. She would call me every morning at 5 o'clock and say, "Good morning, sunshine." Not that I wanted to be up at 5, but that was okay. She would call me at noontime and tell me to turn on this radio station and listen to this gentleman who was going to give me prayer for that moment. And I needed just that. 15 minutes of prayer during the middle of the day on my job was absolutely perfect. And then in the afternoon, she'd call me and remind me of what meeting I'm supposed to be at. And she says, "You get to the meeting, and we'll take you home." And that's what happened for a long time. Now, if you remain open-minded in this program, or maybe if you become open-minded, okay, then you just do what you're told. For 2.5 years, folks, I did what I was told. I didn't do nothing else. You hear me? Nothing else. I went to work, I went to meetings, and I went home. That's what I did. I didn't come up with no major decisions. I didn't have no goddamn opinion about nothing. Now, I don't tell the women that I sponsor that they got to do it that way, but that's what worked for me. And I needed that, because shortly after 2.5 years in this program, after I'd prayed for God to take that feeling away, you know that feeling we all have? You know, when your body gets hot and you get a little restless. Well, I did. I prayed to have it removed, and I got real confused because he really had removed it. And then I wanted something, and one day I just kind of woke up, you know, and Lord knows what happened. I met a guy, and it happened, and then a little bit after the guy, a woman, and that's when real utterness broke out in my life. In recovery. It was very painful. And we need to have some foundation, because you falls out of this shit real hard. And thank God that I had enough foundation. I also had some people who were willing to hang there with me while I went through the madness. All of that materialistic stuff, everything had to go. Everything, including a beautiful home that had been my dream for a lifetime. But I was willing to let it go because all I wanted was to stay clean. That's all I wanted. So not only at that time did I remain open-minded, but so did other people around me. And they had allowed me to do whatever it was I thought I needed to do, but they didn't leave me. At that time, there were a few women that was in my life, and they were allowing me to share with them, and they kind of carried me to meetings. I became so in tune to what was going on that I became physically blind for a little while. And they literally had to carry me in and out of places. But that was okay. It passed. And it was when I made a real decision, folks, and that was to find out really who the hell I was. See, a lot of times, you know, we got a lot of coming in here in 6 months and to a year, they got the 12 steps. I've been working at this thing for a long time, and I ain't got nothing for real. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about like lockdown. You know how you when you were using, you kind of knew you had it, you know, your fix locked in, and wherever you was going to get your stuff from locked in. I can't get this locked in, because every day something different happens. And I ain't got no control over it. But I tell you, I've worked real diligently at that point in time in my life. 4-step work became absolutely necessary. Absolutely necessary. Not only did the 4-step work become absolutely necessary, but so did a therapist, so did 3 and 4 meetings a day, and a lot of prayer, folks. That's when I learned how to sit still and hurt, God damn it. And one of the things I think that keep us in the mix is the unwillingness to hurt, because all of us can't stand pain. But if you experience it once, God damn it, you know you can get through it the next time. So what I got involved in at that point in time was the program of Narcotics Anonymous. See, I started going to other areas. I started going to other meetings. I got to conventions, and the first one I went to in Miami, 500 people. You hear me? Just 500 people. And we were in a town that was predominantly white at that time in the fellowship, but me and Brother Rick went down and they thought we were Creoles. At least Brother Rick is, but I ain't, you know? But it didn't matter to me, okay? And what I did at my first convention, folks, was to sit. My sponsor had already told me. I sit still and I watched. I watched. I couldn't believe I was down there on that, what is that ocean out there, the Atlantic or the Pacific? The Atlantic, whatever the hell it is. You know what I'm saying? Do you know where I had been before I came into Narcotics Anonymous? Nowhere. And man, I was so excited. But the excitement was on the inside, and I dared not to move on the outside. And when I did, it was to go to a workshop or to go where I was staying. And I heard the message. I heard that people all over were in recovery. I heard people at that time from England, and I really couldn't believe that. And when she said, you know, the F word, it really blew my mind. I said, doggone, I thought just people in Washington talk like that. You know? But she said it, and I said, wow. And I got pictures, folks. That's right. I appreciate what this program has done for me. You understand? So it started happening, okay? And what I started doing was being able to wake up in the morning and not be feeling sorry that he brought me to. I started feeling grateful that I was waking up in the morning. And I had a plan of action for that day. I knew where I was going to go. I was going to go to work, to a meeting, and go home. And you know what? It was even all right to go home then. I had a lot of trouble at home, but that's all right. You do when you got two kids you don't know nothing about. And I had two kids I didn't know nothing about. And one was ready to take wings, and she did. And I was out looking for her, and the police was coming and everything else. And finally my sponsor and Billy G and them told me, let go and let God. And you know how we are. Well, how do you do that? Well, when the pain gets great enough, you let go and you let God. And it becomes real simple. And she had her run too. Okay? I began to do some other things. Not only be with the women in terms of sharing my experience, and at this point in time, there was some hope. I began to go on retreats with women. I had the first one at my house. 45 women showed up. And I thought that was miraculous. And we had our differences, but when we left out of there, we had one thing in common. We had absorbed some real strength in that house that day. And then we continued on, folks. See, they talk about service in this program. A lot of us may not want to because we're lazy. But I tell you what, I don't give a damn how lazy I am. I better do some service. Because the message I got a long time ago was you can't keep it until you give it away. So things begin to happen. I'm so glad I got into service. Thank God I got to know a few people. And most of all, I got honest. I got honest. I did not take none of those little fellas, you know, on them jobs that I worked and molest them no more, because I did that to a few. And when I say little boys, they were men, but, you know, for me, they were just little kids, because I always wanted something to cradle and to love, and that's what I did. I nurtured them to death, you know. But But I had some values instilled in me by other people. They told me don't mess with them guys in treatment. And I did not, folk. And I'm grateful to this very day because they're all still speaking to me. They have the... And I am truly grateful for that. Believe me, folks. I'm not ashamed of who's watching together because I know what we're doing. Okay? And I believe women in here can have that kind of respect, but you got to work with yourself first. You got to work with yourself. So I'm hoping and praying that a lot of the women that I've been affiliated with will do that because they just don't know the joy. I mean, you just don't know the joy. So I was able to do the kind of work that for real I've always wanted to do. Now, stay open my program. Dot told you the other night that everybody in here got a special gift from God. See, and when you get clean and you sit still and you work the steps, you'll find out what it is. And all I ever wanted to be when I went to school was a teacher. And you know what? I'm a teacher. Understand? And the one thing about being a teacher is you got to work the lesson yourself. And that's what I do. I works the lesson, even some days when it's painful. And everybody in here has something just as special. But you got to sit still and listen to that little voice inside when it tells you right from wrong. And it will tell you. There are a couple of things that happen in recovery. I lost my mother and my father both. And it was not too soon. I had been able to make amends. The amends to my father was just to sit there with him on his deathbed and let him feel the touch of my fingers on his back. And he knew that my love for him had never changed. With my mother, I had to go into therapy and then finally sit down in a room with her one day when nobody was there and tell her exactly how I felt. I thought my mother hated me. I thought she was ashamed of me. And my mother said to me on that very day that I was the pregnancy that she really wanted. And I want to tell you folks something. That God will give you an opportunity to make amends. But once again, you got to be sitting still and listening for the message. Before she died, I was in her room. Before my father died, I was in his room at the hospitals. One of 7 children that was fortunate enough to be there. And they both were tired and they wanted to go home. And I was grateful for God's will. But right after their death, each one were 2 grandchildren born. And who should be sitting at the operating room to receive them was this great grandma right here. You understand? For those of you who do not know the will of God, for those of you who do not sit still, you will not know the joy. And that was all I ever wanted in my life, was the peace, the joy, and every now and then, that passing serenity. So I've done some work in this program, and I don't stand up here and tell y'all, you know, I ain't did nothing now. Goddamn, I ain't done a lot of work in this program. You understand? I've had to endure. I no longer suffer, folks. I hurt for a reason. And my God has kept every promise that he ever made. My sponsor told me if you can't see the goodness of the Lord amongst the land of the living, you're in trouble. So that means if you're where it's happening, folks, which is in Narcotics Anonymous, you'll see it. Now, we ain't talking about not having fun. Ain't what I'm talking about. Some of y'all know I get real serious, but I has fun. I know how to do things today. You know, go bowling, go to meetings, go swimming, go lay out in the sun. That's what I did in Florida, child. I laid out on the beach like I knew something. You understand? All 299 pounds in a bathing suit. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And I got pictures. You know, I've learned how to do a lot of things in here. I love to dance. It's just that I can't dance long now. You know, 15 minutes is enough, and I have to go somewhere and sit down. You understand? But it's all right. God did not take know-how and life from me. He filled me full of it. And it's great. A few months back, I didn't know whether I'd walk. I was laid up in bed for a couple of months. You know, got laid off my job, and I got real crazy then. Good God Almighty. I hadn't been without a job in 52 years. And I didn't know what to do, but you know what? Called on the Master. And he sent the fellowship to my house by telephone. Physically, they walked in, and they took care of me. And this is what this whole thing is all about. Doing some things you have not done before. You do not have to sit around and go through your madness in your head, because an addict alone is in trouble. It was in this program that I learned about the God of my understanding, folks. I was raised in the Episcopal Church, got confirmed, all them little white dresses and all that good stuff. They wanted us to be them good children. It was in here that I found out that God was loving, forgiving, and wants nothing but the best for me. And I'll tell you how I found him. My sponsor told me I could borrow hers until I found one of my own. And then a guy in a meeting one day said, if you don't know how to pray, just get on your knees and check in. And that's what I did. I got on my knees and said, you know how sarcastic we can get. Well, here I am. Then it went from here I am to help me. And help me some more. I had no problem about asking for help. And I don't care what it is I need, I ask for it. You hear me? No matter what it is I need. Okay? Some of us don't know how to ask for it. We try to angle for it. But I asked for it today. And if it's his will, it'll happen. I've learned a lot from the women in this program. I've learned that I did not have to be so sorry and so pitiful and so pathetic as I was when I came in here. I've learned how to stand up and represent my life. And don't even try, folk, don't even try to come to me with no shit. Now, all I'm talking about is you can pull me in quicker than I can pull you out. So I don't hang around the madness. I have to move on. I see a lot of people that's still using. And what I learned how to do from the day I got here was to say hello and just never stop walking. See? Just say hello and keep right on walking. And they will see what's going on. And they won't bother you. You know what I mean? This has been the best thing that ever happened to me. And I cannot say that the way that I really feel. Because sometimes you cannot put it into words. But what I've learned how to do is to put it into action. See, a lot of people want to talk gratitude, but it's the guy sitting in here right now, I hope, who said, Carmalita, it ain't about talking, it's about doing. And he said, you get up and you get in with him. Sometimes you make, a couple of ladies did for me when I got here, they had to buy me some clothes. I didn't even have no clothes. You know why? Because at that program, they took all that stuff away from me and said, you don't need this. And they brought me my first dress when I went to a fellowship dance or whatever. And then the guys in the meeting with me, they danced with me, you know, and I'm saying, this is incredible. I had my first birthday party in the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous. And I was getting old, folks, and hadn't had a birthday party. And then, lo and behold, when I turned 50, I went over to these friends' house. Oh, man. They fixed a that was fit for a queen. And then about 10 o'clock, they turned the lights down low. I said, what the hell's going on now? And, child, they had one of the finest looking little boys come out. Stop having fun yet, y'all. And that's what I'm talking about. You know, having fun. And I mean, it was great that night, I tell you. Whew. And he was so, you know, it was like, you know, just he was... And it goes on and on. It really does. So you don't have to come in here and square up to a point where you're unable to live your life. The important thing is to unravel the madness in your gut. And then you can proceed to hook up what you're thinking with what you're feeling, and you might be able to put that down on paper and begin to live it. They give us the guidance through the 12 steps. When they talk about the inventory, folks, follow the directions. Get the pencil, get the pad, get the quiet time, say the prayer, and call your sponsor. When they talk about giving that to God and another human being, and with a couple of my ladies, when we did it, we got us a big bonfire going because we burned that shit up. You understand? Because it was time to let go. And my sponsor, she does not do fifth-step work, and that's all right, but I got a confidant who was willing. It happened to be a man, and that probably was just who I needed to share it with, so I have to face my madness. And it was okay. Knowing my character defects, a lot of shortcomings, I ain't mad no more, because at least I know what it is. You know, some of us walk around in the dark. And when once you start that on, it ain't a problem picking up the pencil. Right now, when I get on them planes, and my gut gets to flipping, it writes me a letter to God. That's my closest contact. And it gets me from one point to the other, because I'm scared to death of airplane flying. And y'all hear thunder this morning around about 3:30. I was sitting because I got honest about what goes on in my gut. It scares me. And that's almost like God saying, all right, in order to... And I... You is something I always wanted to do, and I did not know how. And I can do it today, even though I get a little nervous on whatever I might get. I can do it. Now, what I plan to do, I don't know about y'all, but I plan to stay here. Okay? My sponsor says, look how far he done brought me. Now, I'm going to tell y'all something. There must be something even greater down the way. You understand? See, I'm talking about this little fella I told in the workshop. I still call them little fellas, because they're about as small than me anyway. But, you know, I've been this little fella. I've been able to, you know, hand or whatever. And I kind of know that God has something special. I don't know what it is. All I really want is a companion, somebody to talk to. And this guy talks a long time, folks. This program for 15 years. Only had, you know, I think I had the relationship for years. And I really haven't been with nobody since then. You know, I really, really haven't. And it's been okay. You can do it. All present pain is bearable. All present pain is bearable. All you got to do is talk about it. And see, I share in meetings in a minute and tell them when I'm ungrateful, grateful. You see, they told me to use these meetings for what they're for. There have been times when I've even wanted to kill people. I kill them in the meeting. I stop there. And then I go out into the world and act like a civilized human being. But see, a lot of people take their stuff out of the meeting, and then here they go on the telephone. I need to talk to you about Mama Carmalita. Put in the meeting. It's your meeting. It's my meeting. And whoever don't want to hear it, hey. I know one of the things that has happened for me in this program, I used to hear my sponsor that she was a jewel. She used to say it all the time. And I says, my God, how can you feel like that after what we've been through? But you know what? I don't necessarily relate to a jewel, but I really feel like a woman today. I feel like I am, and I know that I'm a child of God. And everything that is supposed to happen for me will happen. There will be some things that will happen to me, but it's all in the lesson plan. The lesson already planned. And I'm just going to show up and reap the benefits. My sponsors say, thank God for the pain. And I said, this lady's crazy. But I thank God for the pain, because that is exactly why I am right here today. It's because of the pain that allowed me the openness and the willingness to do something about it. And now there's the joy. I want to say to every one of you in here, as I said earlier, just leave this building. Take the program, take the love, take the admiration. Don't walk out of here without acknowledging somebody else other than yourself, because you did not get here on your own motor. Believe me, it has been said that prayer brought us all here, whether it was your family, people in Narcotics Anonymous, or whoever. I did not have one of those bright thoughts in my mind saying, well, since I've used so much drugs, I need to go somewhere and get some help. It wasn't working that way, folks. What I had was a lot of different people telling me, you don't have to live like this, or you could do better. And I know they prayed the moment I left their office or their presence. I want to say once again that to all of the women here, it is nothing wrong with hugging another woman, with getting close, with sharing with her your experience, strength, and hope, and acknowledging the fact that we need each other. Now, it's not to separate us from the men, but what it does is to give us that kind of admiration, that kind of appearance and personality that maybe the men need to see. And then, too, we all can get together. Okay? There's one other person in here named Lorenda, and she was my bonding partner at a retreat. Not that there weren't other women, but her and I had a special duty. And I'm going to tell you something, folks. When you go out of town, when you go wherever and you meet, I mean, it is so good. It was so good to see her. She was down in Washington, and we just, you know, it's, every now and then you want that good feeling. And it ain't going to just come through sex, folks. In fact, I done had a whole lot more and there was no sex involved. And that's the kind of stuff I want. See, where I don't have to give up my every ounce or dignity to get something in my life. That all I have to do is share my experience, communicate, and it's going to be all right. Someone has lost their keys, so make sure you check with the convention committee if you don't get it now, outside the door. So I'm going to say, I really appreciate you all listening. I couldn't even imagine all of you would be around this morning, because a lot of times folks are ready to head and move on to wherever they have to go. But I just want to leave you with this thought that I do, because I through song, because you all need to know just how much you've done for me. And in what you've done, remember, you've helped to mold this woman into what she is today. For those of you who got my number, my address, please follow through, because you never know when I may need some strength. There's some of us have been around here, and a lot of people are assuming that we're well, and folk, we're not well. I get real insane because I feel just like you do. I may stand still a little longer than you, but I always need a solution. And most of the time, the solution has been love and admiration from others in Narcotics Anonymous. Because of you, there's a song in my heart. Because of you, my life has had its start. Because of you, the sun will shine, the moon and stars will say you're mine forever and ever to part. I only live for the strength and the hope you give. It's heavenly to know you're so near. Because of you, my life is now worthwhile, and I can smile because of you. Thank you.